President Trump's bond in the New York cases have been reduced. You know, you've heard the stories. It was $500 million he was going to have to get, and whether they were going to start seizing assets and what was going to be breaking from that. Now we know, Will, the bond has been reduced to $175 million as he waits on appeal.
President Trump had appealed to this appeals court, trying to get them to reduce the bond amount that he'd have to put up. And because this would cover the $454 million civil fraud verdict that was handed down earlier this year. And what this is now, because that verdict, to put up a bond, it would have to be in the amount of 120%. So the bond he would have had to acquire would have been $545 million. We were all expecting today, because he was unable to secure the bonds, he told that to the appeals court in the filing that he filed last week, that he was unable to secure these bonds. So we expected today Letitia James to start seizing assets. But now, just before everyone expected these properties to start getting judgments against them, now the appeals court hands down lowering the amount for a bond that he would have to put up from $545 million down to $175 million and gives him 10 days to do it. So it kicks the can down the road for Letitia James. She can't start seizing assets right now today. So you're not going to see Trump Tower as Letitia Tower as soon as this afternoon.
Right. I'm sure there are a good portion of you going, well, that's still ridiculous, the fact that it's at $175 million. And sure, you can believe that, but you can't help but wonder if this is considered, I guess, a win, if you will, as it does push things down the road a little bit. At most, it pushes things down the road. Not to say they're not coming after him, not to say that he won in the sense, but there's a lot different between $175 million
over $500 million is
over
what he was having to put up.
There's some big difference from that when you're a Donald Trump. If you're anyone, to be able to find that liquid. The headlines are a little misleading right now,
right?
Because you'll read Trump in court as as the bond is dropped, lowered. He's actually in court on a different case.
Right. That's the Alvin Bragg campaign finance case that the trial date was supposed to already have started. Actually, I believe this week is when they were supposed to start trial, but then they agreed to a month extension, and now there is some sort of documents dispute about who had which documents when, whether the defense had the appropriate documents at the appropriate time, which could delay that even further. But you're seeing that simultaneously as you were expecting. So that's New York City. You were expecting to see the Attorney General of New York in the civil fraud case start trying to seize assets. So these headlines were competing with each other and got a little confusing that he was in court on one thing, but then we were expecting to see his assets potentially seized in another manner. And what we're seeing now is that the assets will not be seized today. The appeals court has delayed the deadline now by 10 more days. So President Trump has 10 more days to post bond. And that bond...
That was supposed to be today.
Correct.
Today,
she could have started seizing assets today.
This morning, yeah.
Which makes sense now why we didn't see a huge rush, is that they were probably noticed by the appeals court, wait for our opinion. And now we get this out of the appeals court that he has, within 10 days, has to put up a bond amount of $175 million, which would have been in contrast to the bond amount he would have to do, which was 120% of the judgment at $545 million.
Thank you very much. Judge Engoron has done a terrible disservice to the state of New York. What he's done is terrible. Businesses are fleeing, and you see that. We just released a statement on Truth. Businesses are fleeing and crime is flourishing all over the state, and what he's done is such a disservice and should never be allowed to happen again. New York State is being battered by his decision. So I greatly respect the decision of the appellate division, and I'll post either $175 million in cash or bonds or security or whatever is necessary very quickly within the 10 days. And I thank the appellate division for acting quickly. But Judge Engoron is a disgrace to this country, and this should not be allowed to happen. Thank you very much.
They are presenting it as a win, and a thankful win. And yes, I can do it, is essentially what he's saying.
And there's also a statement that just came out of the Attorney General's office, Letitia James, where she's saying the judgment of $454 million still stands. So that's the explanation that we need here.
Yeah.
The appeals court didn't overturn the judgment. or the amount that he was found civilly liable for within this case. But the quirk of the system is that he had to post bond, or he had to pay the full amount and able to go through the full appeals process.
Yeah.
See, what she's saying is he's still on the hook for the full amount, even though the appeals court said he can appeal the judgment and not have to put up the full amount. So there is a little bit of nuance there that it is a preliminary win, even
that's why I said I wasn't sure if he was going to take this as a win or not. Clearly in his statement, taking the victory, taking this as a win.
I don't know where it goes from here. I don't know what the makeup of that appellate court or even what the state Supreme Court will do. But even if they reduce that from what is one of the most outrageous things any of us have ever seen, utilizing the judicial system in a state court to go after a former president for a victimless crime that wasn't a crime because the people were saying there was no crime, but New York happens to have a specific statute where they can say, you know what, maybe it is a crime. So what we're seeing here is hopefully a little bit of sanity, even with that bond amount reduced, that they're like, listen, we should let this play out. Let's reduce it so it doesn't all of a sudden become havoc where you're seizing all the assets, making a public spectacle, and maybe they're afraid that they'll re-elect him as well.
I'm glad about this particular decision. The correct number for the bond pending appeal should actually be 0.
Right.
But look, this is better than where we were just a handful of hours ago. Hopefully puts President Trump in a better position to defend himself against these really weak claims that have been made by Letitia Jackson. We know that this case was brought politically, and now to try and use the financial power that comes along with getting a judgment is fundamentally indecent. And so, your question is, do I hope this is rationality returning? I certainly do, but we should not forget that they are attempting to use the legal system to undermine an opposing candidate in a political campaign. That is indecent. It's wrong. It's inconsistent with American tradition. And I hope, broadly speaking, not just with a lowering of a bond in one particular case, but more broadly, that they will cease using this and allow us to go all compete for votes. And then in November, we'll see who the American people choose.
In President Trump's tone that he's taken this as a victory, that is a much more manageable number. And it also is hopefully delaying it until, like you said, the American people can really vote for who they want as their leader. The fact that it's only $175 million, and you hear President Trump going, thank you, I appreciate that. Why? Because it feels at least maybe there's a heartbeat of sanity still somewhere in this country. And that is pretty shocking, but it's still $175 million.